Have you ever looked at your bank account or wallet and wondered where in the world did all my money go? Well, if you have, you're not alone, and I've definitely been there before. Hello, my name is Lucia. I live in the Bay Area, California, which is arguably one of the most expensive states or expensive areas, and I wanted to provide just a few tips to help you cut back on any excess spending and help you save money in the long run. I myself have had long periods in my life where I have had really unhealthy spending habits. I know how difficult it can be sometimes to make those choices that will help you in your future and for your future. And quick disclaimer, I am not a professional financial consultant. These are just a few tips that have helped me in my own personal experiences with learning how to manage my finances and making wiser decisions with my money. So without further ado, here are the 5 tips that have helped me with prioritizing and allocating how and where I spend my money. Tip number 1, avoid debt when possible. It can seem so tempting sometimes to want to charge things like jewelry or new clothes or vacation expenses on a credit card. Another thing to note about debt is that with interest, you'll often end up paying more than the item was originally worth. You pay off the cost of that item as well as the interest rate on top of that. I encourage you, if you're finding yourself charging a lot of items on your credit card, to try cash stuffing or otherwise only spending the money that you have readily available. And again, I just want to note that not all debt is bad. For example, student loans often have a high return on investment, so for some folks it may be worth taking on that extra debt. Tip number 2 is resist impulse buys. And I know this is easier said than done. Those impulse buys may be fun in the moment, and it may be fun or exciting to have new home decor or the newest pair of Nike shoes, but these impulse purchases will add up quickly over time. So my key tip here is to ask yourself 2 questions when you go to purchase an item. Question number 1, will this add value to my life? And question number 2, is this an investment in myself, my health, or will this have a high return on investment? Doing some of these exercises or reflecting before making that purchase will just help you avoid some of those impulse purchases and really identify what are those items that are truly bringing value into your life. That brings me to tip number 3, which is do it yourself when you can, or otherwise identify areas in your life that you've been spending extra on that you could actually take into your own hands and do yourself. For example, cooking and growing your own food, doing your own hair and makeup for events, washing your own car instead of taking it into the wash, making that trip to the grocery store or the retail store instead of paying extra for delivery. So I think one of my favorite tips is to see if you can start your own garden. I think we all know how incredibly expensive groceries can be these days. And even if you only have a patio or even just indoor space, you can always start with a few small plants indoors, or even trying planters or having a few pots out on your patio could be a great option just to get started. If you have a sewing machine collecting dust in your corner, maybe you can take that up and learn how to make your own clothing alterations, which are very expensive, by the way. Doing your own nails, hair, and makeup. These are all ways that we can save money. I would encourage you to see and try to identify where in your life you might be outsourcing some of these things you could otherwise be doing yourself. I think the possibilities here are endless. Tip number 4, and I want to put like 5 stars next to this, live below your means. This, I know, it's easier said than done. And I myself have personally experienced the phenomenon of lifestyle inflation. So lifestyle inflation occurs when an individual's income rises, and as their income rises, so does their spending. So these 2 variables have a linear relationship, and essentially as someone's income increases, maybe as you get further in their career, they tend to spend more. I personally found myself in that situation where when I started earning more, I saw that I was spending way more than what I was previously. So I was spending more on eating out, washing my car, getting my hair and nails done, and all these things add up so quickly over time. So I personally think the number 1 way to combat this, to combat lifestyle inflation, is to live below your means. This can be tricky as we start earning more. I think naturally we start saying, oh, I can afford this, I can afford X, Y, and Z, which I was never able to in the past. So I think one of the best tips I could give is to truly try your best to live below your means, even when it's hard. So even though you may want that new apartment and you could afford it, or you could afford that down payment on a new car, this doesn't necessarily mean that these things will add true happiness or true value to your life. I also want to mention that I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing to treat yourself to take out food every now and then, or to take that trip of your dreams that you've never taken. Balance is the key here, but to generally try to live below your means, especially nowadays where there's so many people who have been impacted by layoffs. So in that sense, living below your means can actually act as a safety net, especially in the event of job loss or loss of income. So that's just another way to keep your finances healthy in the event that something like that does happen. Look at the purchases that you're making or going to make and ask yourself, am I living below my means? Am I making good financial decisions, good financial choices that will benefit the future me and that will help me in the long run? And we are now on our last tip number 5, which is to prioritize what's important to you. And this is another kind of introspective one, but I encourage you when you can to try to align your spending habits with your long-term goals and your values. So for example, if your goal is to become fluent in many languages and travel the world, maybe prioritize spending on those language learning applications or programs. Decide on affordable places you could travel to. If you love cooking and aspire to be a professional chef, maybe invest in a few high quality pieces of kitchenware that will last you a long time. And if someone wants to become a doctor, investing in medical school, even if it means taking on debt, may be worth it to them and their goals in the long run. So to summarize, align your spending with what's important to you and what you value, but also remember to allow for flexibility and ensuring that you have cash cushions and healthy savings accounts as well. Now, I want to emphasize once again that not all spending and not all debt is necessarily a bad thing. For example, I like to treat myself to shopping at the thrift store every now and then, or treating myself out to lunch. And I think the key here is to be reflective about your purchases while also giving yourself flexibility to treat yourself and treat those you love. I also want to mention that I by no means am perfect with my money. I still make what I consider to be bad purchases or bad money mistakes, so I'm still learning. But using these tips, I've been able to slowly and consistently build my savings and cash cushions over time. So I hope that you found these tips helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.